Hello, my name is Lisa Shea, and this video is part of my horror story series, which is for both writers of horror and readers of horror. In this particular story, I'll be talking about one of my short stories, Death Watch, and talking about how I created it and the motivations behind it and so on, to give you some insight into horror story writing. I also chose Death Watch as the first one because I get a lot of readers who are confused by it, and I thought that by having this explanation of behind the scenes for it, that people would be able to see better what it's all about. So, Death Watch. Move this out of the way. Alright, so this is a short story that's 15 pages long. It's about 4690 words, and this is free on all different platforms. So if you're interested in reading it first, then you can go read it. It's everywhere. It's on Apple, iTunes, it's on Kindle, it's on Nook and Kobo and so on. It should be on Wattpad. So if you want to go read it, you can. If not, just be warned that there's spoilers in this discussion where I talk about the story itself. So to give a little bit of background, I run writing seminars and publishing seminars and so on, and I used to say that I would write anything except horror. So I write mystery, romance, science fiction, fantasy, I write nonfiction and fiction, but I always excluded horror, and I think in part because many of my friends write splatterpunk, gory kinds of stories, and I'm not interested in writing that sort of thing. But when I thought about it some more, I do like writing thrillers, and I like writing stories that are psychological. So I said, well, if I'm going to write horror, maybe I should tackle stories that involve fears that I have and concerns that I have that are more mental and emotional rather than gory types of things. So that's how Death Watch came about. When I was thinking about topics that I care a lot about, one of them is how we treat mentally challenged people in our judicial system, and also how we treat prisoners on death row. When we kill people right now, we give them a chemical cocktail because we think it's a more humane way for us to deal with them. And the first part of the cocktail paralyzes them so they can't move at all or they can't speak. And the second part of the cocktail is a poison that starts killing off their body from the inside. And the poison is agonizingly painful, but they can't move or speak. They can't tell anyone this agony that they're going through. And sometimes the body fights to stay alive for an hour or more. So this person is trapped in a body. They can't say or do anything. They're aware inside there, and they're in agonizing pain for an hour or more. So all of this upsets me immensely. And that was the impetus for me starting writing the Death Watch story. So in Death Watch, we have a main character that we're watching in third person, but most of the story is through his view of the world. And he has mental challenges, so he's an unreliable narrator. He doesn't really understand the things that are happening, where many people around him would understand the ramifications of the things that he's enduring. So we start with Vern in his cell. He's been in his prison cell for 10 years, and he went in when he was 25 years old, so he's now 35 years old. And we learn that he has a mother and that she died, so we can get a sense that maybe he is in prison because of whatever happened to his mother. And he knows that it's coming down to his final days. So he's thinking about his cell that he's been in, and he thinks about how his father left when he was 5 years old. So Vern's memory of his father is that his father left with a redheaded woman, and then they just left his life and they never came back again. His mother then put him down in the basement because she was upset with the whole father leaving with the redheaded woman, and she claimed it was just for a few days, but then she ends up leaving him down here. So she is greatly mistreating this person who is mentally challenged, who is her son, who she's supposed to be taking care of, and this has been his life up until he gets sent to prison. So this life of his being imprisoned by his mother in the basement goes back and forth with his current life, which is him being imprisoned in the judicial system, getting ready to be killed. So he talks about his mother used to bring his food, the guard brings him food. We start learning that one of his obsessions is with counting his fingers to 10, and we don't know yet why. We get a view of when he was going into prison where they talked about his disabilities. And again, because he's an unreliable narrator, he didn't understand what the disability talk was about. He thought it meant his physical strength when he knows he's strong. But the lawyer, of course, was talking about his emotional and mental challenges that he has. So his father hasn't come to visit him, his aunt hasn't come to visit him, and he mentions that his aunt had black hair during the trial. So we wonder if his father and aunt were always paired together would she have been the person that he remembered the father going off with? And right now it seems like no, because the aunt during the trial had dark hair. So we go back about how he misses his mother, how his mother was upset that the only thing the father cared about was that Vern had 10 toes. And again, with this being an unreliable narrator, Vern thinks that this is great because he has 10 fingers and toes, and therefore this means that he is a wonderful child. He doesn't realize that his mother was being sarcastic and saying that she was disappointed that he had these mental challenges. Hello, Zuzu. Yes, Zuzu, you want to eat everything and step on everything. Come on. Good kitten. Yes. Yes, yes, just sit right there. Good kitty. So, his mother was upset by this, that he had these mental challenges, but Vern doesn't understand that, so he thinks that he was an ideal child and he doesn't really understand why he was put into the basement. He just thinks that it's what happens while people are renovating their house. So he's waiting and waiting for his father or aunt to show up. They do not. And then the process starts for him to get killed. So the warden comes in, they tie him down to the gurney. The chaplain comes in, and the chaplain is trying to get Vern to discuss these issues and to express contrition for the sake of his soul. But Vern, with his mental challenges, doesn't understand what he needs to be sorry about. He just does what he does because it's natural to him. His mother wasn't bad for putting him in the basement. It's just what the mother did because she had to keep the house organized and trying to work on the house. So he's not understanding any of these sorts of things. But then here we get into part of the issue is that his mother trained him like a Pavlovian dog not to ever speak about what happened in the house. And this is a theme that comes through in many of my stories, the notion that talking about what bad people are doing to you is bad, and that the victim is conditioned into feeling that if they talk about something, they're the bad person, that it's not the actual person who's doing all the bad things. So the mother who's doing all these atrocious things to her son is convincing her son that talking about it, my cat's trying to walk on my keyboard, that talking about it would be a huge sin and one for which he would be tormented for quite a while, instead of acknowledging that she's the responsible person who's causing the bad things in the first place. So the chaplain's trying to get Vern to confess. Vern is not willing to talk about anything because that was the rule that his mother laid down, and he refuses to talk. And he also doesn't understand what he did wrong to even talk about. So the chaplain leaves, and then the warden comes in, and the warden gives his shot at this and says, you really should talk about what happened because you're not going to have a chance to talk very soon. And he thinks back, Vern thinks back to what happened, and it turns out that there was a young girl with flaming red hair and his mother, and he was just reaching for them, and both of them fell down the stairs, and both of them ended up dying. So the warden says that Vern should talk about why he threw his mother down the stairs. Well, Vern didn't, and Vern finally gets up the energy to try to say, I didn't throw them down the stairs on purpose. It was an accident. But the fact that he starts to talk makes him realize that he's just violated his mother's most important rule, and that the penalty for that, even just saying 2 words, is going to be a long period of torture. Wouldn't just be death. Death would be too quick, but he would be tortured for a while. So now he's fully expecting that this torture is going to come because he began to talk. So they bring him out to the viewing room, and the father and aunt come into the room, and now we realize that the aunt does have red hair, that she was just dyeing her hair during the trial so that if anyone mentioned red-haired people sneaking off with the father, that they wouldn't realize it was her. So it was the red-headed aunt with the father, and it was their red-headed daughter. And they've both got hearts and vials on their chests, and the vials are the ashes of their daughter, and the hearts because they both love their daughter. So they have come to watch the killer of their daughter die. And I suppose the father might be a little concerned about the ex-wife, but probably not, one would have to think. So they give the paralytic to Vern, so now he can't move, talk, he is completely motionless. And then they give the poison injection to Vern, so now he's feeling all the pain, he's inside there knowing that the pain is beginning, and he can't talk, he can't move, he can't do anything. So for the people watching him, it just looks like he's peacefully going off, but inside him he's having all of these pain and agony happening. So the aunt is really upset that he's alive and is very happy that he's going to die, and time goes on and on. And some of my readers asked if this him misperceiving the way time is progressing, but this actually does happen, which is again part of what really upsets me about, well, many things upset me about this whole situation in real life. But one of them is, if we're going to kill someone, we should do it quick and final, with a guillotine or with a firing squad or something, so that the person just dies, because that should be our purpose. We shouldn't be torturing people for an hour or two when they're about to die anyway. So it just, never mind someone who's mentally challenged. So it's upsetting in many different ways. So in any case, he is actually being poisoned. He is trapped in a stationary body, and time is going by, and he's just being tortured and tortured, just like he knew he was going to be when he started speaking out against what his mother did. So by the end of it, he's just pleading to die because he can't take the pain anymore. And his aunt finally finds, forgiveness is the wrong word, but some peace with that he's suffered enough and that she can try to move on with her life. And when the aunt does that, he is able to release himself and he ends up dying. So some of my readers ask, was I thinking that the aunt was controlling how long he was being tortured for, or was he controlling? I think it's a combination of all those sorts of things. On one hand, it's the poisons themselves that aren't concocted properly to kill a person right away. There shouldn't be a way for a person to go on for an hour and a half while they're being killed like this in the first place. So there's a failure at the poison stage. But then there's a combination of a person's will to live, and I'm sure we've all heard stories about someone who really, really wants to stay alive can try to last an extra day or two until their loved one comes home, or whatever the motivating factor is. And then part of it, we could say maybe there's a supernatural aspect that the aunt wants him to suffer for a period of time before he's finally able to get his rest and peace. So in my mind, it's a combination of those three things that is going on there. So those are the ideas behind my story. I tried to make the different scenes full of details about the mold in the places and the stark bleach kinds of smells to show that both of them were unpleasant, and that Vern notices them, but he doesn't know any better. He doesn't know what a different kind of life would have been, so he sort of accepts these things as the normal way that life is going to be. And I tried to make it dreary is probably the wrong word, but I guess without any joy through most of it, and without any other real emotion, because he really hasn't had any love in his life or any sort of escape except for his reading of children's books. And then we get to the end, and it's a stark contrast between that kind of, we'll say, mild describing up until we get to the actual when the poison's flooding through his body, and now he's finally getting some impact on what he's doing, but it's all negative. It's all just pain, 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 and that's the only thing he's really experienced in life that's out of the ordinary, out of his normal just boredom and nothing to do and no one to talk to and that sort of stuff. So I wrote it based on real life emotions, and I always recommend that. Write things that you really care about, because hopefully that'll come across when you're writing it. If I was writing about, I don't know, the kangaroo situation in Australia, if it's something that I don't really feel strongly one way or another about, then that'll come across in my writing. And there are plenty of people in Australia who will write those kinds of stories where they could bring it to vivid life, and those would be worth reading. So I shouldn't be writing a pale version of what they adore. I should be writing stories about the things that I feel passionately about, and hopefully I can bring that emotion across to the readers. So please post in the comments if you have any questions about how I constructed the story, if you have any questions about the story itself or some of the sections that maybe I didn't explain in full that you were still interested in. Let me know if you've written similar kinds of stories and what kind of challenges you've faced. And let me know what other kinds of content you'd like me to post about, or what kind of authors you'd like me to talk with it. So please like the video, please subscribe to the channel as I post more of these videos. I will try to get Felix to come join us next time. It's usually Zuzu that comes climbing all over me while I'm doing this, but Felix might poke his head in. And I hope you have a great evening.